All right, so here's the big question. Can housing save the day? Young Americans, well, they're waiting longer and longer to buy their first home. But I got to tell you today, home builder sentiment for August rose to its highest level in a decade. So maybe this is the inflection point. Certainly, I got to tell you, it stopped the market, which was plunging today, the stock market. Jillian Melchior, National Review reporter, joins me. Back with us again is Steve Moore and Senator Scott Brown. Jillian, I'll start with you because we got this report out. The millennials, they're waiting longer. But maybe after it's all said and done, they do what every millennial generation did before them, go for the house with the white picket fence and the family formation, and they live the American dream.
Well, I think you're right that we're pursuing the American dream, but I would say I think we are the only ones that have learned our lesson from the recession. You see the federal government going in, putting in place similar policies that are also going to incentivize high-risky mortgages. You see them pursuing, FHA, HUD, going after the same sort of policies that are going to incentivize low-income, moderate-income people to go after homes. Millennials are the only ones being cautious right now. We're the only ones holding off to buy a home until we can afford it.
Senator Brown, you're involved in the housing market. Is that why home builders are so supremely confident they know the government's stepping in here?
Well, there is some government incentives, obviously, to help and build housing. In New Hampshire, for example, rental housing is huge. There's an incredible demand for it. But here's the problem. People your age, my daughter's age, they have an incredible amount of student debt. And as a result of that student debt, they're waiting longer and longer to actually buy a home. And why are, by the way, the parents moving back in with their kids? So how do you deal with that? So you have parents moving back in with your kids. You've got
that's the sandwich thing they're talking about.
You've got students who can't afford, so they're back with me and parents like me. So not only do we need traditional homes, we need rental homes, affordable housing opportunities, because the markets, and I think you saw the uptick today, I think it's somewhat cyclical depending on where you live.
Well, we know that in general real estate is local, but Steve Moore, to that point, we have seen an amazing growth in rentals. Every time the housing data comes out, permits for multifamilies are through the roof. But from an economic point of view, this millennial generation that prefers to rent, aren't they boxing themselves in because these rents are going through the roof? If you start to rent now, you may never be able to buy a house. You may never be able to put the money together for a down payment.
That's just what I was going to say, is like, if there's ever a time to buy a house, it's right now, when you've got, mortgage interest rates that are as low as 3.75%. And when I talk to young people, and I always say, look, you're going to tell your children and great-grandchildren there was a time in America when you could get a 30-year mortgage for 4%, because that ain't going to happen, in my opinion, again for the next 50 years. And it hasn't happened for 50 years. The big problem, I think, with millennials isn't that they're cautious. It's that, that they have a record low labor force participation rate. Charles, when we look at those numbers on the decline in labor force participation, it's young people that aren't working, and their wages and salaries haven't grown. So they just, quite frankly, can't afford a house. And by the way, I have a 22-year-old that's at home right now at my house, and I want him to get the hell out of there and buy a house.
Well, I'm in the same camp, so that's why I kind of chuckled a little bit.
You have, obviously, the banking regulations have changed.
Sure.
Whether you...
But they for the worst, though. I mean, I guess Dodd-Frank might have come from a place of concern.
Listen, I voted for it, but it was never supposed to be like it is today, because we were supposed to have the opportunity to fix it. They don't want to fix it. They know what the problems are, and they just don't want to fix it, and that's the problem. In the deposits, you have to come up with a larger deposit. Being approved as a borrower, it's like going through a nightmare.
It's pretty tough. Bottom line, though, Jillian, it's your fault. All right, guys, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
It always is.